Well, we're back with another episode. A little bit of a more slower weekend.
Slower weekend, mate. I don't even know what was going on. You know,
Was it?
We've got
Yeah.
FA, right. So the FA Cup, it's the staple of English football tradition. They had one game on Saturday evening, then three on the Sunday, with a Premier League game just scattered in the middle of it on the Sunday, which, I'm sure everyone was gutted to miss out on a bit of Watford against Southampton. But you never know. There were 4 goals. It's probably the most goals we've had since it's come back.
Probably up there, isn't it?
Well, we are recording this on a Monday afternoon, and that means that tonight is the big one. It's Crystal Palace against Burnley.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I feel like that's always the game that's like people are like, oh, well, don't want to watch Palace Burnley or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's that one game that
it on Monday night.
Yeah.
It's like this is the test of how much people want to consume football.
Yeah.
When the government were like lifting the nation's morale to bring it back and stuff. Now this will be the barometer of that.
Yeah.
How many people? Because it's on Amazon Prime as well, so it's not even like it's easy. I think they've made it free to watch, to be fair to them, but it's like it's not even easy to watch.
It's not looking good for it, is it? I mean, do you feel like the hype's it's probably died down a bit now, isn't it?
Do you know what though? I'm actually not. I don't want to say more excited now, but for me, it's like the league's been won, which is all good, but everyone's kind of played at least 2 games now. So you've had that kind of rustiness, We'll be speaking later on to a guy called Jamiethorpe, who's part of, he's a Leicester podcaster, basically. And we were speaking about that because yesterday they obviously played against Chelsea and it wasn't really as much Leicester, but especially the beginnings of both halves. Chelsea were terrible. Like the mistakes would literally, you'd expect them from like a Pagan player or something like that.
Not me.
Well, apparently you don't play for him anymore. Is that a shock transfer?
No, but it's
Relegation.
We even spoke about Chelsea the other day when they played Man City, and there's times where I was looking at it and thinking, they look knackered. They just don't look like anything's going to happen. But for somehow, since they've come back from restart, they just get results, and they just seem to have this resilience. And I do think that they have some really good depth, and I think that that's playing a big part.
Mate, 100%. I mean, I've been surprised how good Willian looks. He's looked really good for me. But I think the biggest thing from the weekend, in a Chelsea perspective, was I think I don't follow them religiously at all, but to me, that's the first time I've seen Frank Lampard show real backbone. Because at halftime, obviously, they weren't playing well. They weren't losing, which is, for me, even more impressive that he made that triple substitution. And the fact that he included 2 young players in Reece James and Billy Gilmour, especially Gilmour. When he played against Everton before lockdown, he was genuinely sensational. I know I'm going to take the Liverpool game out of that because, it's FA Cup and sometimes, whatever. So there's different things. But it was a Premier League game and he looked like the most mature player. And I just thought fair play to Lampard that he took 3 players off, changed it. But I think he almost admitted he got it wrong as well. And it's this is a bigger problem for Chelsea in the future because they had Kante holding, Gilmour to the left, Mount to the right. I think for Frank Lampard, especially if he's going to play with a Gilmour or a Jorginho, who I'm sure will be flirting with clubs in Italy, left, right, and centre. This has been mooted before. I'm not being groundbreaking here, but I do genuinely wonder if Kante is suited somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. I mean I think Chelsea have had, it's kind of been for the amount of time that I can remember through our like kind of childhood years where Chelsea was always the club where they had loads of young players, but they never seemed to come through at Chelsea. Yeah. But now they're in a stage where they've got 4, 5, 6 players who are all very, very good coming through. And with Frank as the manager, there's absolutely no reason why he, as a Chelsea kind of legend, wouldn't want that to be the case and wouldn't want those players to come through. But in saying that, I mean, Kante, I think, for them, he's amazing as well. The way he plays, and where would he go though? I don't know. I can't see him
N'Golo Kante go wherever he wants. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying he's not good enough anymore.
No,
I'm
yeah,
saying
no, no.
it's so important, but it's the way they play.
Mm.
And, think of the money that you could also get for him, reinvest it and stuff like that. But, that's kind of, for me, the whole point that Lampard and obviously Jody Morris came in as his assistant, because obviously he was the under-18 manager. And I think that, they were obviously having some problems with Abramovich not being able to enter the country and stuff like that. But this is what it's shaping up for now, is it's how they progress from that. Because they've almost had that year, haven't signed anyone, obviously on the back of the transfer ban, having all the kids involved. And now you've got Werner and Ziyech coming in. How do you begin to build on that? And I just think that, they are winning these games. Obviously, they're looking great shape for the top four. I mean, I'm surprised because they're in the top four now. But once again, we're going to speak later with a Leicester fan, they're like a point behind Leicester. And at one stage, I think he says they were like 14 points behind them, and they're really getting closer. I just think fair play to Lampard. Been a bit thick in the media about him getting the job in itself. Obviously, did he deserve it? Had he done enough before that even to get the Derby job? But they're obviously buying into some sort of ethos there. And I just, once again, fair play to them. But looking at the other FA Cup results, it's strange that we're going to have a semi-final with 4 big teams in it. Normally there's a little plucky underdog, but it hasn't happened this year.
No, and I think probably most importantly for Arsenal, we'll start there. I think that it's probably a bit of a distraction that they need from the Premier League to kind of mask some of the issues that are going on there. But, I think they'll be happy to, and they'll be wanting to obviously get to the final and win it. Well, as will all the teams, obviously. But I think most importantly for Arsenal and Man City, I mean, obviously, Pep won't want a season without a trophy. I mean, obviously, they did win the Carling Cup, didn't they? But Carling Cup? It's always the Carling Cup for me, I think.
It's the Carabao now, isn't it?
Yeah, but for me, I can't see past Carling.
It's funny because it's like defines how old you are, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, the Johnson's Paint Trophy in League 1 and 2. What's that? Just the EFL trophy now.
Yeah.
That obviously, God, that's had some names over the years, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that kind of just defines how old you are.
Yeah. But anyway, so I think for those teams especially, it's important. And I mean, the Arsenal game, I think that it was late, but I think they seem to have the majority of it and seem quite fairly comfortable.
I think it's a massive win because, obviously McGoldrick scores that goal in the 87th minute, and to come back from that and obviously win it before extra time. Well, I had a bit of Mikel Arteta after the game and he was dreading extra time. He's found this restart really grueling. Obviously, they had that extra game against City, which was obviously very tough for them because they lost players and had to do ridiculous amounts of chasing the ball.
Yeah.
But to get that goal, hopefully for them, has a newfound bit of confidence for them. Because to be fair to them, they struggled obviously against City, but to lose in the manner they did against Brighton, to turn it around, because they have really, it's a good win away, a very good Southampton side who have shown that they can dispatch weaker teams in Norwich and Watford, which we'll briefly speak about in a minute. But, that's the kind of little platform you'd like for them to use as a springboard. But my concern is just that the turnover of players they have. Consistently, it's either Aubameyang's on the bench or Lacazette starting like he did yesterday. Then Nketiah is starting. It doesn't seem to be, and I get this is what Arteta's saying because there's been too many games and he's having to use the squad. But you'd almost want to see a bit of consistency, really, especially as almost like a idea of what they're going to be like next season. Yeah. Because right now, I honestly couldn't tell you what he's trying to build towards in the immediate future.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Because obviously we're not seeing the training and everything like that. And there is a need to rotate. There's no doubt about it. You see the amount of injuries and people that are struggling already. But yeah, it is true. They need that consistency. And maybe he just doesn't quite know yet what's the best way to kind of to incorporate them, And I think that's obviously something that will hopefully come in for an Arsenal fan's sake. But Yeah, it is weird, but it is a big win, I think, and I think Sheffield United, on the contrary, are they haven't really been able to pick up where they left off, really, have they?
They haven't. I mean, Chris Wilder has been very vocal about it. They are, simple as that, really struggling. But I think, they'll have a bit of solace in the fact that there was a bit more fight from them against Arsenal. And they did deserve to get something out of the game, especially the second half. I thought they were really good. But for me, this is like nitpicking and it's harsh, but it is players like Chris Basham. And I don't want to just single out the not least experience because he's an old pro, but, he's played predominantly his football in League One. But when I look at him, I don't want to blame him for the penalty. I thought it was probably a penalty, but it was a bit harsh. But he misses a gilt-edged chance with a header. Once again, he's not a striker, but you'd still back him to score it. But it's just little things, sloppy things, being out of position. And you've got so many players there that are obviously, they've got to play at 100%. They have to, because they are, with respect, championship players. And, you're getting the most out of them. And they'll hate being called championship players, but I'm just saying that's where they've played the majority of their career.
Yeah.
And to become a Premier League player, you have to consistently do what they're doing at the moment. And at the moment, they are showing, well, before lockdown, they were showing that they're Premier League class. But it's just a case of that, isn't it? If you've got like 4 or 5 players not fully on it, then it's difficult. And like I said, especially the way they need to play. But, it's hard for them because obviously they're fighting to get, I guess, in the Europa League because they're obviously, safe this season. But it almost feels, for me, like it'd be a bit alien for the players. Not only have they never been in this situation, but Chris Wilder is clearly an incredibly hard taskmaster. And he's going to be trying to get the most out of them to really push into something that they probably never thought was even theoretically possible at the beginning of the season. So it's hard because some, I think, naturally will be like, look, we've stayed up this year. We've smashed it. And do you remember back in the day when you'd see like a Tony Pulis team get to 40 points and then just sack off the rest of the season?
Yeah.
They don't want to be like that. But naturally, you're thinking, look, we've set out what we've aimed to do. And this push just might be a little bit too much for us. And we don't think that we have it within us to do it. So it's hard. It's hard to find the right dynamic, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I mean, obviously, yes, there was FA Cup, but going on the league, it's only 3 points from them to Everton, who are in 12th. They've got to play Tottenham this week. They have to play Wolves. They have to play Chelsea. They have to play Everton. They have to play Southampton. It's a difficult run. And, the fact that they haven't been able to find what it was that they had before working for them after the restart, you would be looking at that and think, I would agree that it is probably too much for them. And I don't really want to see Sheffield United in the Europa League anyway.
Why not?
Very nice. It's weird. I think Everton should be in there. No, but I mean, I think it probably is just a little bit too much for them.
Yeah, I'd agree, mate. But that doesn't mean they haven't had a fantastic season. But just to quickly round off the other FA Cup games, obviously Man United got a pretty vital win for them away at Norwich. I mean, they played okay, but I would have been concerned, especially with how extra time went against 10 men. I think they were struggling to break down, a spirited Norwich side, but that's all they really tend to be, is they're a spirited side. Don't get me wrong, but they it's why they're bottom of the league. Without Timu Pukki, who hasn't played very well for a while now, I think that's probably 9 games or something that he hasn't scored in a row. Yeah. It's difficult, and he's such a talisman for them. But then to, address my side's debacle on Sunday evening, it was very predictable. You could see it coming from a mile off. It goes back to what I've been saying last week. I feel as though we should have rested players for the midweek game against Aston Villa. I don't personally feel as though our result 1-1 would have been any different whether we brought in players like Lazaro and, Ben Taleb, who couldn't even play in the FA Cup because he was suspended because he got 2 yellows in that competition already, just to give players a rest. And he didn't do that. Shelvey then was an unused sub because he was unfit. So you lose out on him. Richie couldn't make it because he got injured. Hayden played despite passing a late fitness test with Sean Longstaff the first time he's played because he's been unfit. Asking to play them in the midfield two against Manchester City, both players were obviously unfit, especially a player like Sean Longstaff. I quite like that one there. Don't know where that came from. But, you're playing him in the middle of the pitch. It's very difficult against a side like that. I get why he went 5 at the back, mainly due to personnel. But I just...
I was going to ask you about that. I mean, in terms of the fact that we know, obviously, Steve Bruce has come under a lot of kind of criticism for the way that he sets up his teams. And I think when you're playing against Man City in the league and you need points, I completely understand that way, in the same way that Ancelotti did it against Liverpool. But maybe in the FA Cup, I get it's a quarter-final, semi-final at place, but do you think maybe could have gone for it a little bit more? I mean, Man City had 75% possession, pretty much camped in your half for them.
That where it ended up, I thought it'd be a lot more than that.
Do you think maybe could have just gone for it a little bit more, considering it was a cup competition?
Of course he could. But that's the thing is, a lot of Newcastle fans don't like Steve Bruce. And I think that yesterday was... the biggest nail in his proverbial coffin, because I'm a fan. I think he deserves respect. What I was about to say before is that is exactly how Rafa set up against Man City, and they obviously beat them 2-1. That's why he went with Carroll to kind of replicate the Rondon being able to be a target man and hold up the ball. Yeah. But you literally live or die by the sword. Fabian Schär gives away a stupid penalty.
Really stupid. Yeah.
He should not do that. No. That is not in the game plan.
Yeah.
Then when Bruce decides to open up the game, Dwight Gale misses an open goal.
Yeah, I mean,
although I don't think that he set the game up right, and I've got a thing on this where Man City, Pep Guardiola are used to playing against defensive sides that will put 11 men behind the ball. So in training, I'd be shocked, unless they're about to play Liverpool that weekend, or maybe even Chelsea to an extent, which they showed last week. Yeah. They are going to practice, probably bring the youth team in, and put them all behind the ball. So they're used to doing it. They know how to do this now. It's very difficult for them, but they have mastered it in effect. So when Steve Bruce does that, when we change out of something that we've become used to, playing 4-2-3-1, to go something that was more defensive, which, by the way, we stopped doing because it was too defensive. Yeah. He's obviously got it wrong, but there's a part of me that thinks that he's a bit unlucky, because if those two things had gone for him, it could have been a different game. But however, there is no denying that it was like a flattering 2-0. It could have been anything. Not that they were raining in shots on us, but it was, just because of the pure amount of pressure. And I don't think a lot of Newcastle fans, certainly some that may have been on the fence, will ever forgive him for that, because it was the first chance for the club to get silverware. They keep on talking about 30 years, but I mean, God knows how long it feels, for Newcastle to be genuinely challenging. Well, I'm delighted to say we are joined by our very first guest on the Step 9 podcast, and it's Jamiethorpe, and he's joined us from First 4 LCFC podcast, and that means, as we have already previewed, we are looking at Leicester in a bit more detail. Now, we're recording this on a Monday afternoon, and yesterday I sat through 90 minutes of the Foxes' defeat against Chelsea. I mean, Jamie, I want to start straight there. I mean, it's obvious that it's disappointing being out at this stage, the quarter-final stage of the FA Cup. But I just kind of wanted to speak to you about the performance because, although I thought there was quite a lot of sloppy elements of it, I felt as though that Chelsea looked, quite tired almost. It's been quite a fast start back since, obviously Project Restart's got going. But I just wanted to know what you thought about it.
Yeah, you're right. I think in the first half, especially, we had a bit more zip, a bit more drive. We're moving the ball quite neatly, pressing Chelsea really well. And I thought we were actually just a couple of sloppy touches at crucial times away from taking the lead and being the better side, really. It was when Chelsea made the changes at half-time, bringing the likes of Kovacic off the bench, and they sort of really grew into the game. And I feared for us that we didn't take our chances, because in the previous two games, we've been really sloppy, not created anything at all. We haven't scored since the restart, which I think is really telling, considering we played Watford and Brighton as well. And so with the fact that we didn't take those chances, confidence was sort of draining away a bit. And you could, when the goal came, it had started to feel a little bit inevitable. But weirdly, I took a lot of encouragement from the first half, especially performances from the likes of Yuri Tielemans. I thought he looked like he was getting some way back to his best. So I'm hoping that we can sort of try and take some positives from it, because it was a disappointing day, like you said. First time we got to the quarterfinals in a really, really long time as well. And to lose in the semis and then into the quarters of 2 cup competitions is really disappointing. So hopefully we can make it a successful season and cling on to top 4.
It's funny that you mentioned the 2 draws. Obviously, you would have probably had them down as games that you would definitely be looking to win. But the possession, you're still having the majority of the ball. What do you think it is that's just not kind of going right for you?
I think teams have started to treat us a little bit differently. They are very happy to sit back, let us have, because unfortunately, the teams that we're competing against in the top 4, they've got this wealth of attacking options that players that can really change a game. You see the likes of Willian popping up with that ball in for Chelsea's goal. It was a fantastic bit of delivery, but we've got Maddison as our main creator, and then if he doesn't fire, we really struggle to sort of get going. And you see teams like man-marking Maddison, 1 or 2 players. We used to have it with Mahrez back when he was playing for us, but he was that good. It didn't really matter how many players they had on him at one time. So I think that's what it is. I think they're sort of trying to stifle us, and we need other players to really step up. Harvey Barnes has done it on occasion. Perez has sort of done it, but not enough, really. And Vardy, he's isolated, but perhaps even he needs to start trying to make it happen for himself a little bit more as well. It's about trying to share the load, share the responsibility, and just try and get it clicking again. Because when we do fire, we're brilliant. But it's just not quite happening for us at some point.
Yeah, I mean, as a Newcastle fan myself, I've become, accustomed to Iosi Perez being incredibly frustrating. He blows incredibly hot and cold. But it's interesting that you've brought up Harvey Barnes, because it's quite interesting that, Barnes has, I think, been a staple of the side, really. And it almost reminded me of when Mark Albrighton played for the majority of that title-winning season. You almost have a player who perhaps doesn't get as many plaudits as other players. I'm just wondering if you think that now, so there's a stat doing the rounds that since you played Norwich in mid-December, I think it's December the 14th, and drew 1-1. Before that, you'd taken on average 2.4 points per game, but now since then it's just 1.1. From what you've just said there as well, especially about Maddison and players like that, do you just think it's a case of maybe teams have just kind of, discovered how to play against Leicester?
Yeah, I think there's an element of that. That Norwich result preceded us playing Man City and Liverpool back-to-back games, and this was when we were still in the mix. We were never really title challengers, but we were at least keeping Liverpool interested. And then we played Man City and Liverpool and got beat. I think it was like 7-1 on aggregate over the 2 games, and I think that just absolutely ripped the bottom out of the confidence. And it seemed like the following 3 games they were almost in shell shock. We've got a very young side. I think the average age of our midfield at one point was about 22. And I think that there was a real knock-on effect from that. You're right about Harvey Barnes. I don't think he does quite get the plaudits that he deserves. But again, he, like you said, he's one of those. He is very, very quick. He's very direct, and he's absolutely so dangerous when there's space. We played Villa the game before we came back, and they really pushed at us, and he tore them to pieces. They couldn't handle him. But when teams sit back and there's not as much space, we struggle a little bit more. And I think we've got to learn and we've got to adapt how to play against these sides that are willing to defend against us.
Yeah, I think we mentioned it on the podcast maybe last week or the week before about how those teams are just sitting back, and it's just you're not being allowed any space in behind, which is obviously how Vardy's been so successful over the last few seasons. And yeah, it does just look that kind of you need some new ideas in a way, and it hasn't quite happened yet.
Yeah, that's it. I think we need more of an outlet simply than kind of trying to get it into the channels or get Vardy running in behind. And that's what I mean about him needing a bit of help. Someone else has got to offer something. And we've got to have to, Rodgers is being criticised a little bit now for seemingly not having a plan B. Certain Leicester fans are even saying that they need a target man back in the side. Like, let's just go to the old school 4-4-2. I think that's how bad it got in the last game. But I don't know. I think we're still that side where we are going to clip one game. And we might not score 9 goals again, but we will put someone to the sword. It needs to happen sooner rather than later.
Well, I really hope it's not Wednesday.
Yeah. I can't see it being against a team like Everton, but we're starting to get a bit looking over our shoulders. It's a nervous Nervous time to be a Leicester fan.
It's nervous, but you still sound pretty upbeat, which is good to hear. I mean, I've got the table in front of me now, and obviously, no one's close to the top two. But we've been speaking, as Lucas has mentioned on the podcast, quite a lot about Leicester, and obviously we are massive fans. We kind of thought, though, you were a bit more safe in the top four than you actually are. Just for people that obviously are listening or watching this, you're a point clear of Chelsea, who are in fourth. But you're only 3 points clear of Wolves, who are in fifth. But obviously, they have played a game more. But Man United even back down on 49 points, which is 6 points behind you, played the same amount of games. I mean, the caveat to this is obviously Manchester City. We don't know what's going to be the ruling from CAS. And obviously, if they lose that Champions League spot, everything will be okay in terms of Leicester. I mean, it's difficult when you start the season so well, because it's kind of hard to maintain those levels, really. And, as most armchair fans, they will just kind of look back at, those performances and then, associate you with them. And you're right, it's been difficult and teams have been working you out. But, we've got 7 games to go here. I mean, I'm going to put my neck on the line and say you will still make the top 4, whether, City drop out a bit or not. But I just wanted to know how, if you're still confident about it.
Yeah, I mean, because we've still got that little cushion, but it's massively eroded. I think at one point we were like 14 points clear, and at that point you started thinking, God, even we couldn't mess this up. But this is Leicester City that we're talking about, and there's always a chance. And I think if you look at this week's fixtures, obviously we play Everton, which is going to be a really tough game with the way they're playing at the moment. But Wolves, I think the fixtures are really in their favour, aren't they? Chelsea play Watford, I think. Man U play Bournemouth, and Wolves play a mid-table side in Arsenal. So it's going to be be really tough for us because we could easily be sat here on Saturday with us a level on points. And I think that it's bound to get in the players' head, the fact that they were so far ahead. But having said that, you're right. We didn't get there by accident. We turned in some brilliant performances earlier on in the season with the exact same squad. At some point, we are going to have to find that form. I think we are paying the price for a weird January recruitment. We didn't bring anyone in other than Ryan Bennett on loan from Wolves, who's only made the matchday squad once or twice. He's just like a forgotten man. And we needed a bit of creativity, I think, but in that window. But I still think we'll do it. But I'm not I wouldn't put a huge amount of more money on it because I've already been on it.
Well, I think it's probably a good place to kind of round up, as you mentioned, the recruitment there. Obviously, you've had a lot of links, obviously Chilwell to Chelsea, players like Maddison, they're very sought after. Does it worry you that those players could be departing over the summer?
Yeah, naturally. It's just where we sit in the hierarchy, isn't it? It's almost one of the downsides of doing well is that traditionally bigger clubs are always going to be circling around your players. And I think one thing's for sure is that if these players leave, it's going to be for massive fees. Our owners aren't going to be bullied. We've got 80-odd million for Harry Maguire, which is just amazing, considering Soyuncu's come in and been arguably a better player. So I don't know. I don't want to see any of them leave. Obviously, I want to see us establish ourselves as one of the top 6 clubs. And you do that with your best players still at the club. So fingers crossed that we hold on to them. But if we don't, we'll definitely be compensated quite nicely, I think.
Sure.
And I think that's a lovely way to round it off. But yeah, for me, certainly, it almost seems as though, because you are an incredibly well-run club, and I feel as though there's a lot of teams, obviously I've mentioned I'm a Newcastle fan, Lucas is an Everton fan. We kind of look at Leicester because, with all due respect, historically the clubs are probably similar size, but you are run in such a well-esteemed way that you won't sell, and this is what I'm trying to get at, probably more than one of those players this summer. And if it was to be anyone, there's obviously a lot of links with Chilwell, but as you say, you'd probably be able to get ridiculous amounts of money for a left back, especially considering the current climate. And I definitely back you to reinvest that. But Jamie, look, honestly, thank you ever so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it. I'd like to try and get this right the second time. So it's first for LCFC. Now, that is indeed a podcast. I think I said LFC to begin with because there's just been too much Liverpool chat at the moment.
Unfortunately.
Thanks for having me on.
All the links will be in the Twitter and everything. And thank you very much for joining us.
Amazing. I really enjoyed that, guys.
Just to end it, as we said at the beginning, bizarrely, there were some Premier League games over the weekend. And you might have missed them. I wouldn't blame you if you did. We've seen a really, really poor resumption for all of the teams down there. You know, they can't get a win for love nor money. I mean, we watched Villa Wolves together. We watched it through the PS4, which was slightly delayed, and you managed to ruin the goal for me because you had some Danish app that updates you whenever someone scored. I took that personally. I think you should, mute those things when you're going to watch football with someone. But I understand, you like to be in the know and you like to be first to it, and I respect that. Watching the game, though, and I think we both commented on it, I'm a bit worried that Villa and Dean Smith seem to bow to a bit of fan pressure by playing Samatta and Davis up front. Obviously, they want that. Don't get me wrong. He may have thought that himself, but for me, it's concerning this late in the season when you're trying. Don't get me wrong. Once again, you can try something new, but it didn't feel right, especially because he played a narrow diamond. That never tends to be too successful in any level of football, especially the Premier League, especially when you're up against Wolves, who have 3 centre-backs and 3 centre-mids. So they're going to have a packed midfield. You're going to have a packed midfield, but they've got better outballs. Matt Targett got taken off injured, but even Matt Targett, you don't back him to act the same way as Johnny does down the left-hand side, who was obviously instrumental in the goal that they scored, especially when they're able to bring Traore off the bench.
Yeah, I mean, they had one shot on target.
Yeah.
And that's not an isolated incident. I mean, ever since I sung their praises a few weeks ago, it just gets worse and worse and worse, and less and less likely that they're going to be able to get out of it. They've got Liverpool and Man United in the next 2 games. I mean, they're only if the teams around them were picking up results, it could be almost as done as Norwich. So they're incredibly lucky that those teams can't win a game either. So, I mean, no win in 9 now for Villa. They just can't create chances and score goals, and obviously that's a major issue. Whoever you're playing against, and yeah, we weren't really impressed with them at all, and well, in the game in general. But for Villa, it meant a lot more. Kind of had a lot more detriment to the fact that they couldn't get something out of the game.
100%. But, I normally talk about the relegation zone and give a little update on the table, but I don't need to. Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
But I've obviously got a point against Newcastle, which is a decent point for them, puts them level with Bournemouth and West Ham on 27, but then Watford are only a point ahead in 28. And, looking at Watford, I mean, I've said this before, it worried me that Pearson came in, they had such a good run of form, but they didn't pull away from the relegation zone. And it's hard to maintain those levels, even more so now they've obviously had this extended break like everyone has due to the situation we're in. But it's when you begin to hear about problems behind the scenes, because I'm going to put my neck out on the line here and I'm going to say Nigel Pearson doesn't know how to deal with them too well, just from past history. But obviously when things have happened in the past at different clubs that he's been at, whether he's been the manager of Leicester, when obviously something incredibly famous happened there, or even as an assistant manager at clubs like Newcastle, it's all going well when you can be the kind of Sam Allardyce manager, come into a club that's really struggling and pull them all together. But when you've got Domingos Quina and Andre Gray playing football with each other and Nathaniel Chalobah apparently involved in some way, which means that the club's official Twitter has, when naming their team, dogged them in it and basically said, look, they've been out, they didn't say they've broken the current lockdown regulations, but they said, in the interest of health and safety. I mean, that is, you don't do that. You do not say that, whether they've done it or not. You do not go public about it, which then made, I listened to Pearson's post-match interview and they ask him, would you like to comment any further on it? And he's like, no, I don't until I've got the full facts. That's putting the manager in an awkward position where he doesn't want to talk about it. So I don't know why the club have done that. But it's kind of, explains exactly what's going on there for me, because all clubs, I'm not saying all clubs have had incidents like that, but I know it probably wasn't exactly when football was coming back, but how many times do Spurs players have to break lockdown rules? That was in the press and stuff like that, but it was dealt with. Yes, once again, like I've said, that was a while ago. But Pearson doesn't want to be talking about that because he'll be absolutely raging they've done that. Not only does it bring the club into a bit of disrepute in the media and to the wider world, it's difficult for him. He's missing out on players that are going to play. Andre Gray, I mean, none of them have been too influential, but they've pinned all their hopes on Troy Deeney. And when he doesn't fire, you need someone like Gray, who, is a bit of a Dwight Gale character, where I wouldn't say he's necessarily Premier League quality, but probably a good Championship player. Still important. And in terms of the bottom three, they're just ahead of it, but I've got absolutely no confidence that they'll pull, clear of it and end up in like a Brighton or Newcastle situation.
No, I agree. And I think we predicted a few weeks ago that they were going to be one of our three teams to go down. And West Ham, Bournemouth, obviously both have a game in hand. It's only 1 point. And yeah, it doesn't look good for them, and it doesn't look good on any club, when they're in that situation where there's just when you need so desperately to focus on just football and just getting results, and just having things like that, it just is not helpful at all for anyone.
No, it's a killer. But we I wouldn't like to call it at the moment, but the one thing I will say is I'm disgusted in myself that I was worried about Newcastle going down. Because if any of those clubs stay up on 38 or 39 points, I will be genuinely shocked. Because right now, I think we're looking at a club going down about 33 points, and that's only 2 more wins. I'll be shocked if any of them get any more than that. But it's been so bad, it can probably only get better.
Well, I mean, you'd hope, but it's not looking good for any of them. It will be close. It will come down to very fine margins, I think.
100%. Right, now, let's end the... Well, I was going to get all fancy then and, really pay homage to the fact that we've had a guest on the podcast, but it's actually not really that big a deal. Do you know what I mean? Hopefully you enjoyed it, guys. But no, we're going to do one quiz question each. So I'm going to ask mine first and Lucas is going to guess it. But in the interest of boredom, we're going to heavily edit it so we don't have to wait here all day. So what I'll do is I will ask the question, okay? And I'll just give you 3 seconds to pause your phone or your laptop, however you're watching this or listening to it. And then you can obviously try and work it out yourself. Then we'll come back in with Lucas's confirmed answers and I'll let him know if he's right, okay? So the question is, who are the only 4 members of the Premier League 100 club? That's the goals. Just to be clear, who never win a major domestic trophy in England. Right, so to repeat a bit quicker, who are the only 4 members of the Premier League 100 club to never win a major domestic trophy in England? Pause your devices. Lucas has currently spent 43 minutes, so that's the length of the podcast, trying to think who these 4 players are, and I think you've only managed to get 2. So hit me with those
2. Harry Kane.
It's been that long that you forgot who some of your correct answers were, but indeed, Harry Kane and Romelu Lukaku are 2 of the correct answers. They're also far more recent than the other 2. Now, the other 2, for all of you that haven't got it so far, one is Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank and the other is Matt Letizia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair play.
I think you've done quite well there. 2 out of 4. I'll give you that.
Well, better than usual. Well, yeah, hopefully I can stump you this one. I've gone away from the Premier League. I've gone international, actually, with this question. So which 3 countries have won the World Cup twice? And only twice. So no more than 2 times and no less than 2 times.
Okay. Pause your devices. Uruguay.
Correct. 1930 and 50.
France.
Correct. 1998 and obviously 2018. And the last one.
Argentina.
Correct. 1978 and 1986. Pretty good. 3 out of 3.
You don't even need to edit that.
I know. It's embarrassing, isn't it?
You can obviously people would have had the opportunity to pause it then, but it'd be nice to know maybe if you think back, if you did get the 3 correct, how long it took you? Because I think I was under a minute there, so I'm quite happy with myself.
You did quite good, to be fair.
You know what? I've redeemed myself from
The
last
search to stump you goes on.
Well, mate, you did last time with, I can't remember, obviously, about the players to win the Ballon d'Or or something like that. I've had the most interaction about this podcast from that. I had loads of people message me privately saying you're an idiot. I was like, brilliant.
Good. Love a bit of hate, but no, there we go. Another good episode, and obviously, hopefully, enjoyed having a different voice to listen to other than us two.
Voice, well, other than me, who likes to go on a bit. No, I'm joking. No, it was good. We're going to start doing obviously a bit more than that, but the main announcement is that we are now on Twitter, because we realised that we were only broadcasting to our same circle of friends. So obviously, they were certainly saturated, and yes, we would like to branch out a little bit more. So, Lucas, do you have the Twitter details?
I do. It is at the Step 9 Podcast.
Oh, of course it is, because that's what we're called. Genius.
Do head over, give it a follow, because that's where we will be posting the latest episodes. And as usual, if you're watching on YouTube, give us a like, have a little subscribe. Same with the Apple Podcast. You can rate on there, I think. So that's always appreciated. And as always, we love hearing your comments.
Yes, indeed. So thank you ever so much. We will be back still as normal, because although it's a bit weird at the moment with Crystal Palace Burnley tonight and then a bit of Brighton against United on Tuesday, there are the rest of the fixtures taking place on Wednesday and Thursday. So we'll be back on Friday morning.